Single family dwelling. So you're going to have mother, children, maybe extended family living there. You live where you work. Up by the mansion are the slave barracks. That's where the skilled workers would live. Mostly male. They're doing the ditching and carting and blacksmiths and carpentry and masonry and brick making. They'll live up there and be able to visit their families on Sunday. So they'll leave work after Saturday, travel the 3 to 5 miles out to the neighboring farms to visit their family. Anywhere from 2 to 10 people living in a structure like that. Subsistence gardens. You'll see a lot of these in these little slave compounds. They're given a daily ration of salted protein and corn or corn meal, and they're going to backfill their diet with what they grow. They will also keep chickens and ducks and bees because they will sell the eggs and chickens and ducks and melons and honey not only to the Washingtons but also in the farm market in Alexandria on Sunday morning. During the Revolutionary War, General Washington meets a young French aristocrat named the Marquis de Lafayette. The relationship between the two is exceptionally close and is very much a father-son relationship. Lafayette puts this question to Washington. How can you talk about freedom from oppression on one hand while you hold another group down with the other? Washington didn't have much of an answer for it. Now, he had already really started to change his views on slavery by this time. As a member of the House of Burgesses, the governing body here in the colony of Virginia, 3 times they petitioned the king to abolish the slave trade here in Virginia. 3 times, and the last time rather emphatically, comes a response from King George going, "Stop sending me this," you can fill in the blank. Washington had even suggested at the Continental Congress that, hey, let's abolish slavery, we start with a clean slate. Wasn't widely held as a popular view at the time. Between the interaction with Lafayette and his really changing attitude towards slavery, Washington is committing to never buying or selling another slave in his lifetime. Now, this is not without economic consequence for him. But what he is guaranteeing is these family units will remain intact. You're never going to worry that grandma and grandpa, because they've gotten too old to work, will be sold. Or worry that your husband, your wife, or your children will be sold. What's happening, though, is eventually, well over 40% of the slaves here at Mount Vernon are called weak hands. They're too old or too young to work. But Washington feels it's his responsibility to care for and maintain these family units. And in what Washington hopes will be an example for the rest of the nation, puts provisions in his will for the manumission of his slaves. Now, there are 316 slaves here. Washington only has control over 124. 153 belong to Lady Washington. They're basically in estate for her heirs. Well, Washington says this: the older slaves I shall care for the rest of their lives. The younger slaves, he will teach them to read. If their trade dictates, teach them to write. Feed them, clothe them, house them, provide medical care, but most importantly, learn a trade at his estate's expense. You get a lot of people come and say, well, why didn't he just free the slaves? You know, it sounds really good in theory, but where do they go and what do they do? And in true Washington fashion, Washington believes in self-sufficiency and the ability to be self-sustaining. Washington is hoping that he will set an example for the rest of the nation. Sadly, it's not to be for most. But I think General Washington goes to his grave satisfied that he has done the best he could do with the situation that, quite honestly, Washington recognized as the businessman, absolute worst way to manage the labor force is to have them in slavery. Any questions I can answer for you guys? Yes, sir.
Try and put this in context. Isn't there a neighborhood, Gum
Gum Springs,
that has
thank you.
the tree that's been...
Yep, and this is people say, well, what happens? Because what you have, let's say you have a free Washington husband, but married to dour wife, and therefore the dour wife and all the children stay within the mother's bloodline. So the father's free, but the mother is not. What ends up happening is they create this slave village called Gum Springs. Thank you for bringing that up for me. Therefore, you're not going to just abandon your family. So what's happening is the slave village is set up. You'll find different signs around the Alexandria area. It was on the periphery of one of Washington's farms, and they established the slave village.